Soul in Seoul. Episode 4. The Name She Found. Scene 1. Min-Seo tells Ari. It is a Tuesday morning, and the café is warm, and the coffee is good, and everything is ordinary right up until the moment it isn't. The place Min-Seo has chosen is a narrow 2-story spot on a side street in Mapogu, the kind of café that Seoul produces in quiet abundance. Wood-paneled walls the color of dark honey, mismatched chairs that somehow coordinate, a handwritten menu on a chalkboard above the counter listing seasonal drinks in both Korean and English. Ari is already there when Min-Seo arrives, seated at the corner table by the window with her natural curls falling loose around her face and a half-finished Americano in front of her. Her fingers wrapped around the cup the way they always are when she is thinking about something she hasn't quite decided yet. Outside, the Mapo streets are doing their Tuesday best, foot traffic and delivery motorcycles and a woman walking a dog the size of a small ottoman, and the light coming through the glass is soft and October gray and entirely ordinary. Min-Seo has been walking for 11 minutes and practicing what she is going to say for all 11 of them, and she has lost every version of it entirely by the time she sits down. This is the thing about Min-Seo Park. She is extraordinary at finding things, at research and assembly and the patient reconstruction of information from dispersed and partial sources. And she is considerably less extraordinary at the moment immediately after, when the finding is done and the telling must begin. She has rehearsed an opening. She has prepared a second line. She has even, in a moment of anxious over-preparation on the walk from the subway exit, scripted a response to the response she anticipated Ari would have. None of it is available to her now. She sits down. She opens her laptop. She turns the screen toward Ari without saying anything at all, because the thing on the screen says more than any of her 11 minutes of rehearsal ever could have. What Ari sees is an archived blog post, the kind that lives on corners of the internet that nobody visits twice, an entertainment industry column from 5 years ago, the text slightly blurred from the quality of the original scan, the photographs pixelated and small. The headline is in Korean, which Ari reads slowly, her knowledge of the language still developmental and careful, the words assembling themselves in her mind one by one until they make a sentence, and then a meaning, and then a shape she recognizes. She scrolls, slowly, the way you move through something when your instincts are already telling you to stop and you are choosing not to listen to them. The article is about Han Seon, a name Ari has not encountered before, a name that the article treats with the specific wistful reverence of a music journalist writing about talent that has gone somewhere it cannot be followed. The timeline is clinical in its clarity. Signing date, first quarter updates, the gradual cooling of press mentions. The termination phrased as a mutual creative separation in language that every person in the music industry knows means something else entirely. 40,000 followers at the time of signing. No official recording since. No interviews. Nothing. And at the bottom of the article, partially cropped at the right edge of a studio photograph taken outside a recording session, a young man in a dark coat, 3 years younger than the face she has been watching through recording studio glass for the past several weeks, but unmistakably, undeniably the same person. The jaw, the straight dark brows, the particular posture of someone who has learned to stand as if they belong in every room and feel comfortable in none of them. And on his left wrist, catching the light with the casual permanence of something never taken off, a silver watch. The understanding does not arrive the way Ari might have expected. It does not arrive in a rush, does not crash over her with the drama of a revelation. It comes the way cold water rises slowly, incrementally, with a kind of terrible patience, filling the space around her ankles before she has registered the temperature, climbing past her knees before the understanding of what is happening has caught up with the fact of it. She does not gasp. She does not push the laptop away. Her hands, which have been resting on the table on either side of her coffee cup, rise slowly, both of them, moving without deliberate instruction, and one comes to rest against her mouth, the back of her hand against her lips. The gesture of a woman who is making sure she does not make a sound until she has decided what sound to make. The café continues its Tuesday business around them. The espresso machine protests briefly. Two women at the counter discuss something involving a phone screen and considerable amusement. A song Ari vaguely recognizes plays from the overhead speaker and ends and gives way to another. The world outside the window keeps its foot traffic moving. None of it registers, because Ari is somewhere else now, somewhere between the photograph and the memories she is now involuntarily running with new information underneath them, every studio encounter, every looked-away moment, every carefully maintained distance on his side that she has been interpreting as coldness and is now beginning to reread as something more complicated and more costly than that. Min-Seo is watching her. This is the specific helplessness of loving someone through a moment you cannot soften or fix. Min-Seo, who prepared for 11 minutes and lost every word, who found this at 2 in the morning on a hunch that had started as a vague discomfort and had become, by 3 a.m., a certainty she didn't want to have. She watches her best friend absorb this with the particular stillness of a woman who processes a depth, and she does not reach for her hand, because Ari Washington does not need a hand to hold right now. She needs a minute. Min-Seo gives it to her. Outside, Seoul keeps its entirely ordinary Tuesday, entirely indifferent to the fact that something just shifted quietly but irrevocably inside the woman at the corner table by the window, her hand still held against her mouth, her eyes still on the photograph, her coffee growing cold. Scene 2. Ari goes cold. By the time evening reaches Hongdae, the discovery has stopped feeling like information and started feeling like weather. She does not cry on the way home. By the time she reaches Hongdae, the café is already behind her, but the photograph is not. It keeps reappearing beneath everything she sees: the studio door, the dark coat, the silver watch catching light at the edge of the frame. So she gives herself one task and one task only: get home, close the door, and do not let the feeling decide anything before she does. This is the thing about Ari Washington that the people who love her understand, and the people who have underestimated her always, without exception, regret. She does not perform her pain. She has watched enough women be told they are too emotional, too much, too loudly affected by things that matter, and she made a decision somewhere around age 19, after the first time a producer told her that her intensity was a lot for the room, that she would reserve herself, the real interior machinery of herself, for the spaces she controlled, and she would offer the room only what she chose to offer. She carries her grief inward. She processes it alone, in the dark and the quiet, and she does not let anyone see the machinery of it until she has made sense of it herself and decided what to do next. This has made her, over the years, appear to recover faster than she does. This has made her appear, in certain crucial moments, to feel less than she feels. Both of those appearances are wrong. The walk back to her apartment takes her through the parts of Hongdae that have, over the past several weeks, started to feel like they belong to her, the corner with the tteokbokki cart that she and Min-Seo have visited 4 times. The narrow alley with a mural that someone has been adding to incrementally and that now contains a small painted bird Ari noticed appearing 2 Fridays ago. The coffee shop where the barista has started making her usual order when he sees her coming down the block. These landmarks, on any other evening, would register as the quietly accumulated geography of a life that is beginning to settle into a new place. Tonight they are just objects. The tteokbokki cart is just a cart. The mural is just paint. The cold in the air that carries the first sharp suggestion of a Seoul November is just cold. Every neon sign that has been beautiful for weeks, the pinks and the golds, and the particular blue-white of a Korean convenience store at 11 p.m. is just light tonight. Not beautiful. Just burning. She gets home. She does not turn on the overhead light. She stands for a moment in the doorway of her own apartment in the dark, the city coming through the floor-to-ceiling window in that particular way Seoul has of filling a room without being invited, all that illuminated density pressing gently against the glass. And she makes herself go cold. It is not a decision, exactly. It is not a moment where she says to herself, in language, I am going to close down now. It is something more organic and more ancient than a decision. It is a survival instinct operating at the level below language, the body knowing before the mind what needs to happen next. The quiet and methodical reinstatement of every wall she has spent the last several weeks beginning, with great care and considerable internal debate, to let down. She sits at the window with her arms folded and the city below her, and she tells herself the things she knows how to tell herself in moments like this. That she has been here before, not in Seoul, not with a man like this, but in the specific territory of having trusted something and finding it complicated, of having begun to believe in something and discovering the belief was premature. That she survived it in Atlanta. That she is still standing. That her voice is still hers. That no one has taken the thing that matters most. She tells herself these things, and they are all true. And none of them helps, and she knows from experience that the absence of help in this moment is not permanent. It is simply the first stage of the process, the stage before anything makes sense, the stage you have to sit inside before you can move through it. What she does not let herself feel yet is him. The specific himness of what she is sitting inside, the way he appeared in that photograph, 3 years younger and already wearing the watch. Standing outside a studio door with an expression she cannot read from an archived pixel-damaged image, but that she recognizes the shape of from the present day, from every guarded moment across a recording studio glass. She does not let herself go there yet. She will. She knows she will, because she is Ari Washington, and she does not get to simply not feel things, she only gets to choose the order. But not yet. Instead, she thinks about the silver watch. This is the detail that her mind returns to, the one that her memory is now running backward through every scene she has witnessed, attaching new meaning to like subtitles appearing beneath footage she thought she had already understood. Every time she has seen it catch the light through studio glass. Every time it appeared at the edge of a sentence, a gesture, a moment where he reached for something and stopped himself. The watch is not new information. She has seen it 100 times. What is new is what it means now, that the man in the corridor and the man in the photograph are not two different people at two different points in a story she does not belong to. They're the same man, and the story belongs, whether she wanted it to or not, to her now too. She sits at the window with her arms folded and the city blazing and the walls back in place, and she stays very still inside all of it, and she does not cry, because she does not cry on the first night. That is another rule she made for herself a long time ago, and she has never once broken it. Scene 3. Ji-Hoon notices. He notices before he understands, and because he notices, he understands enough to be afraid. The message is only 3 sentences long, but by the time Ji-Hoon Kang reaches the studio that morning, those 3 sentences have already rearranged the room. Ari has not accused him. She has not explained. She has simply withdrawn the warmth that had been gathering between them, and the absence of it is the first thing he feels when he walks in. He did not see this one coming. He has been sitting with that fact all morning. He arrives at the studio for the 11 o'clock session to find the room empty in the specific way that rooms are empty when something has been deliberately vacated rather than simply unoccupied. The engineering console has been prepped. The session notes are on the desk. Everything is technically ready and nothing is right. His producer mentions, in the tone of someone relaying information they do not fully understand, that there was a message. Ji-Hoon reads it on his phone standing in the center of the studio, and the thing that happens in him when he reads it is quiet and immediate and has no name he would use aloud. The message is polite. It is professional. It is 3 sentences long, where there would normally have been a voice note. Ari, who communicates with her whole voice even in text, who sends audio messages the way other people send paragraphs, who has never in his presence defaulted to the efficient and the formal. 3 sentences. Apologizing for a scheduling conflict. Requesting a rescheduled time. No warmth at the end. No small, unguarded thing in the margin. Just 3 sentences that are technically fine and are entirely, unmistakably not fine. He goes to find her, and this itself is something he would not have done a month ago, would not have permitted himself, would have filed under the category of things that complicate already complicated professional situations, would have managed from behind his usual carefully maintained glass. He goes because the message has unsettled something he cannot afford to leave unsettled, because he has learned that there is a specific quality to a silence that is chosen and that it is different in texture and weight from a silence that is simply absence. And this one has texture. He finds her in the corridor on the 4th floor at a distance, and the distance is part of the information. She is moving through the building with her natural curls pulled back. She wears them loose when she is relaxed, when she is in sessions she is excited about, when she is in the building as herself rather than as a professional presenting a version of herself. And her chin is level and her shoulders are set in the specific way of a woman who is managing something enormous by sheer force of trained composure. She has not seen him. He is watching her from the end of the corridor, and what he is watching is the back of a woman who has closed something that was beginning, with great care on both their parts, to open. His hand moves. He is not entirely aware of it happening. It is the same instinct that has been operating in him for weeks, the one he keeps filing under professional interest, under reasonable creative investment, under every category that is not the true one. His arm extends slightly, a fraction of a gesture, the beginning of something that in another life would have been a step forward, a spoken name, a closing of the distance between 2 people who have been maintaining it past the point of plausibility. And then he stops. Not because he has thought it through. Because his left wrist catches the corridor light at that exact moment, the silver watch, his father's watch, the watch he has worn every day for 3 years as both memory and penance, and something in his chest, below language and below reason, understands that he does not have the right. He does not know yet what she has seen. He does not know yet about the café and the laptop and the archived blog post with the photograph at the bottom. He does not know that the silver watch on his wrist has already been recognized, already placed, already run backward through a timeline that he carries alone and that has just, without his participation or consent, arrived in her morning. He knows only that something has shifted in the atmosphere between them with the specific and irreversible quality of a season changing, and that his hand has stopped in the air, and that down the corridor, Ari Washington turns a corner and disappears from view. And he stands very still in the space she was just occupying, the silver watch catching the light, his hand not quite lowered back to his side yet, the expression on his face the one that he keeps for rooms he believes to be empty. Because this, he is suddenly certain, is what being too late feels like. Scene 4. The Han Seon flashback. The watch catches the corridor light again, and memory answers before he can stop it. 5 years ago, Ji-Hoon Kang was 24 years old, and the thing he has just recognized in the corridor began on another night, outside another studio door, under lights so flat and bright it left nowhere for a conscience to hide. Memory strips color the way winter strips trees, methodically, without apology, leaving only the structural things, the things that cannot be removed because they are too deeply part of the shape of what happened. What it keeps with forensic precision. The smell of the hallway outside Studio C on the third floor of the original Kang Entertainment building in Gangnam. Carpet and climate-controlled air, and the particular quiet of a building at 11:30 at night when everyone who is not essential has gone home. The specific quality of the overhead light in that corridor, which was fluorescent and slightly too bright and cast no shadows, so that everything under it existed in the flat, shadowless exposure of something that cannot hide. The chair outside the studio door that Ji-Hoon sat in because his legs had stopped feeling reliable and he needed to be below the level of his own thoughts for a moment. Han Soo-yeon had been in Seoul for 14 months at the point the story ends, which is to say at the point Ji-Hoon sat down in that chair. She had come from Busan with a 3-octave range and 40,000 followers and the specific bright momentum of someone whose trajectory appears, from the outside, to be inevitable, the kind of artist who generates a gravitational field of their own, who makes other talented people feel the pull of what they are becoming. She had signed with Kang Entertainment on a spring afternoon, her family present, photographs taken in the lobby with everyone smiling in the particular way of people who do not yet know what the small print contains. Ji-Hoon had been at the signing. He had shaken her hand. He had told her, and believed it when he said it, that he was glad she was joining them. What he did not understand at 24, and understood by 24 and a half, and has been carrying the understanding of ever since, is what Kang Entertainment contracts actually mean for the people who sign them. Not the language of the contracts themselves, which is thorough and legal and technically accurate. What they mean in practice, the ways in which creative control is exercised, the ways in which image directives are enforced, the ways in which an artist who does not conform to the particular vision that Sungwoo has for how Kang Entertainment's roster should look and sound and present itself in the world is managed toward an exit that will be described, afterward, as mutual. What Ji-Hoon heard from outside Studio C that night was a meeting in progress. Sungwoo's voice, which never rises above a certain register because it has never needed to, moving through the specific clinical language of an artist's termination at the pace of a man reading an instruction manual for something simple. A reframing of creative direction, a mutual recognition of misalignment, a confident assertion that Han Soo-yeon's gifts would be better served in a different context, which was the phrase Sungwoo used, a different context, and which Ji-Hoon understood at 24 to mean, you are leaving and you will not be making any recordings under any other label either, because the contract you signed ensures that we have made that mathematically impossible for the foreseeable future. Ji-Hoon sat in the chair outside the door. He sat with his elbows on his knees and his hands clasped and his head bowed, and he did not open the door. This is the fact that has lived in him for 5 years with the specific weight of things that cannot be undone or revised or reframed as something other than what they were. He did not open the door. He knew what was happening on the other side of it. He had enough information at 24 to know, and he sat in the flat fluorescent light of the corridor with his hands clasped, and he did not open the door. Because he was 24 and the empire was vast and Sungwoo was immovable in ways that Ji-Hoon had not yet found the architecture to counter, and he told himself, and this is the part he has been least able to forgive, that it would not help her. That opening the door would not change the outcome. That the best he could do is speak to Sungwoo afterward. He spoke to Sungwoo afterward. In his memory, this conversation is the most useless thing he has ever done with 20 minutes of his life. He made arguments. Sungwoo listened to them the way he listens to everything, with complete attention and complete immovability, the posture of a man who has already decided and is permitting the objection as a courtesy to the relationship, not as a consideration of the outcome. Nothing changed. Han Soo-yeon was already gone. She was from Busan and she was 22 and she had 40,000 people who had believed in her trajectory, and she left Seoul on a train that Ji-Hoon tracked on his phone from the lobby of the Kang Entertainment Building, watching the departure time tick down. And he did not get on it, because what would he have said, and what would it have changed, and what right did he have to chase down a woman and offer her the specific useless gift of being witnessed by the person whose family had just ended her career? He looks at the watch when the memory comes, which it does regularly, without invitation, with the forensic specificity of guilt that has never been resolved. His father gave him this watch the year before he died, and Ji-Hoon has worn it every day since because it is the only thing of his father's that still feels close and real and present. He has not taken it off since the night in the corridor. He has considered, more than once, whether he wears it because it is his father's or because it is also, now, a reminder of a door he did not open, of a name he has not forgotten, of the specific shape of what it costs to know something and choose not to act on it. He has decided, in the 5 years since, that the distinction does not particularly matter. He wears it. It reminds him. And he has carried the name Han Soo-yeon alongside every decision he has made since, a quiet and permanent ballast, the weight of a debt he has not yet found a way to pay. Subscribe plus hit the bell. New episodes drop every week. Scene 5. Ari confronts him. She finds him in the evening outside the studio, because once Ari Washington has seen the past clearly enough to name it, she cannot leave it where she found it. She has spent the day in her apartment doing 3 things: thinking, deciding, and preparing. The thinking has been the kind that does not look like thinking from the outside. She has cleaned her kitchen with unusual thoroughness. She has reorganized her bookshelf twice. She has stood in her shower for a long time and let the hot water do what it can for the specific weight that has taken up residence somewhere between her shoulders and her sternum. The deciding has happened in the way Ari's decisions always happen, not as a deliberate process, but as a gradual emergence, the way a song finds its shape, the melody arriving before the words do, the structure clarifying before she has chosen it consciously. By mid-afternoon, she knows what she is going to do. By evening, she knows exactly how. She has printed the photograph. This is the decision that Min-Seo will later describe as very Ari, with a tone of equal parts admiration and mild alarm, because she needs it to be physical, real, present. Something she can hold steady in her hand where it cannot be scrolled past or minimized or managed by someone else's framing. Her natural curls are loose. She has not pulled them back. This, too, is a decision, though one she would not name aloud. She is not performing composure today. She is done performing anything for the benefit of the Kang family, or the Kang building, or the Kang industry, and wearing her hair the way she wears it when she is completely herself, in her own space, on her own terms, is her private signal to herself that she is not here as an artist under consideration or a professional managing a relationship or a woman being careful. She is here as Ari. Just Ari. Atlanta-born, heartbreak surviving, soul-finding, truth-requiring Ari. She sees him on the steps outside the building's side entrance, where she knew he would be. She has paid enough attention over the past weeks. In spite of every instruction, she has given herself to pay less, to know his rhythms, his exits. The specific timing of when he leaves the building in the evenings when the sessions run long and the car picks him up from the side street rather than the main entrance. He is on his phone. He has not seen her yet. She gives him time to finish, because this is not ambush, this is not drama, this is a question that requires an answer, and she will ask it in the way she has chosen to ask it, which is directly and without performance and with her hand completely steady. She holds the photograph out toward him. Printed on plain paper, physical and specific and real, the studio photograph with the timeline caption underneath it and the figure in the dark coat at the right edge, partially cropped. The silver watch on his left wrist catching the light of a moment 5 years ago. She holds it at the distance of an offering, not a weapon, not shoved at him, not brandished, held out in the air between them with a steadiness that cost her rather more than it appears to cost, because her hand is not shaking and she has decided it will not shake. And she is keeping that decision with everything she has. What she says is not an accusation. It is not pitched in the register of a woman who has come to perform her anger, because Ari has never performed her emotions for anyone's benefit and does not intend to begin with him. What she says is a question with only one acceptable answer, delivered in the low, direct, unhurried voice that is her actual voice when the music is stripped away and she is just a person requiring the truth from another person. Asterisk, is that you? And do you know what happened to her? Ji-Hoon looks at the photograph. Not quickly, not with the brief glance of someone calculating a response. He looks at it the way you look at something when you have been expecting it for 5 years, and it has arrived at last, and you are deciding, in the space of a moment, whether you are going to be the person you have been or the person you might be capable of becoming. The thing that happens in his face is not denial. It is not the careful, studied blankness he deploys in boardrooms and corridors, the expression he has worn so long it has become structural, a feature rather than a choice. It is something older than that and more honest than that, a recognition that arrives in his eyes the way light arrives in a room when a door that has been kept shut is finally, without ceremony, opened. Not relief. Not quite. Something heavier and more earned than relief. The specific look of a verdict he has been waiting to receive, and has decided he will not attempt to contest. The silence between them on the street is nothing like the charged, electric silences that have been accumulating in the spaces between them over the past weeks in studios and corridors and the backs of elevators. Those silences that had possibility in them, tension with a direction. This silence has weight without direction. It is the silence of two people standing at the edge of a truth that one of them has been carrying alone, and the other has just, holding a piece of paper in a steady hand, arrived to collect. Seoul moves around them in all its vast and illuminated indifference. Neither of them looks away from the other. Scene 6. He tells her everything. He tells her everything because there is nowhere left for the truth to hide. The photograph is still between them, plain paper in Ari's steady hand, and her question is still in the air with only one shape it can take now, an answer. Not in the way of a man performing vulnerability, which Ji-Hoon Kang does not do and has never done and would not know how to begin. Not in the way of a prepared confession, a managed disclosure, a calculated release of information timed for maximum relational benefit. He tells her the way a man tells something when he has been carrying it alone long enough that the weight has become more than he can justify continuing to bear, and the person in front of him is looking at him with eyes that see through every layer of architecture he has ever built. And she is standing on a pavement with the photograph in her hand and her chin up and her whole honest self present, and he has run out of reasons that feel sufficient to keep lying by omission to her specifically. He tells her about the night in the corridor. The chair outside Studio C. What he heard through the door. He tells her in the specific plain language of a man who has long since given up the possibility of making this sound better than it is, no softening qualifications, no contextualizing preamble, no, you have to understand the position I was in. None of the rhetorical architecture that people build around their failures to make them appear, from a certain angle, like something else. He tells her he sat in the chair, and he did not open the door. He tells her about the argument with Sung-woo afterward, the full 20 minutes of it, the specific uselessness of it, the way Sung-woo listened and changed nothing. He tells her about tracking the departure time of the train from Seoul Station on his phone and not getting on it. He tells her about the year afterward, when he quietly tried to locate Han Se-yeon through third parties and could not, or rather, could find evidence that she was in Busan and was not recording and had not responded to any industry contacts since the termination. which is information he has been holding and which is not the same as knowing she is all right, but is the closest thing to confirmation he has been able to reach. He tells her about the watch. Not all of it. The part about his father is still private, still something he holds close, still not something he has given to anyone. But he tells her the other thing, the thing she has already half understood from the way he looked at the photograph, that he has worn it every day since that night in the corridor, and that one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of them, is that it reminds him that he has chosen every morning for 5 years to be reminded, because the alternative is forgetting, and forgetting, he has decided, is not something he has earned. Ari listens to all of this the way she listens to music that matters, completely still, completely present, without the fidgeting or the interjecting or the nodding that most people use to signal their attention and that she has never needed. Because her attention is not a performance, it is a state of being. Her eyes do not leave his face. She is processing every word with the full weight of a woman who has trained herself over a lifetime of making and hearing music to receive information at depth, not skimming the surface of what is said, but listening for what is underneath it. The thing below the thing, the note the melody is built on. And then, somewhere in the telling, she will not be able to identify the exact moment later, will not be able to pin it to a specific sentence or detail. It is more tidal than that, more gradual. Something moves in her face. Almost invisibly. Not forgiveness yet, not even close to that. Forgiveness is a later conversation and possibly many conversations and possibly something that takes months. Not softness exactly, because she is not in a soft place tonight, and it would be dishonest to land there prematurely. Something more specific than either of those things. The beginning of understanding that the young man in that corridor was 24 years old, and the empire around him was vast, and his older brother was immovable in ways that the world had spent years reinforcing, and powerlessness is not the same as complicity even when it feels identical from the inside. And he has been exacting a punishment on himself ever since with more consistency and less mercy than anyone who loved him ever could. This understanding does not make it simple. Nothing about tonight is simple. But it is true, and she is, before almost anything else, a person who follows the truth wherever it goes, even when it goes somewhere she was not planning to end up. When he finishes, there is silence. Not the silence of things left unsaid. There are things left unsaid. There will be things left unsaid for some time to come, but the specific silence of two people who have just, for the first time, shared something that is completely true. No performance on either side. No managed distance. No glass between them. Just the truth that he has been carrying, delivered into the evening air of a Seoul park, received by a woman from Atlanta who came here for a dream and has ended up, in ways she could not have predicted and has not yet found words for, somewhere more complicated and more real than a dream. It is not resolution. It is not forgiveness. It is the first completely true thing they have shared, and it sits between them in the autumn air like a living thing, fragile and specific, and not yet sure what it will become. Scene 7. The aftermath. She sits on the floor of her apartment with her back against the side of the bed and her knees pulled to her chest, and the Seoul night blazing through the floor-to-ceiling window, and she does not know what she feels. This is unusual for Ari Washington. Unusual enough that she has been sitting here for 20 minutes simply observing the unusualness of it before attempting to do anything else, because she is honest with herself the way she is honest with other people, without performance, without comfortable revision. She has always known what she feels. It has been, for her whole life, simultaneously her greatest gift and the thing that makes certain situations almost unbearably difficult, the emotional clarity that makes her a great singer. That puts the specific true thing inside a lyric and makes strangers feel it in their own chests, that has been mistaken for intensity and mistaken for aggression and occasionally mistaken for recklessness, and is actually none of those things. It is just presence. It is just feeling what she feels, clearly and without buffer, and being unable to pretend otherwise. This has occasionally been inconvenient. She has never once wished it were different. But tonight she does not know. Tonight there are competing truths occupying the same space inside her, and they do not resolve into a single feeling the way they usually do. They sit alongside each other with their elbows out, each one entirely real, none of them willing to yield. There is what the photograph said, that he was there, that the watch places him at a specific proximity to a specific moment in Han Soo-yeon's life that cannot be coincidental. There is what his voice said, the plain, unadorned, self-incriminating account of a man who is not asking to be absolved, who volunteered the worst version of himself with the specific precision of someone who has rehearsed this reckoning in private so many times that the shame of it has become familiar, manageable, part of the daily furniture of his interior life. There is what his face said when he looked at the photograph, the recognition, the absence of denial, the specific quality of a man receiving a verdict he has decided he will not contest. She thinks about Han Soo-yeon, a woman she has never met and never will meet, in all likelihood, a voice she has never heard, a trajectory she knows only from an archived blog post and a second-hand account delivered in a park on a Tuesday evening. She thinks about what it means to be 22 and from Busan and to have built 40,000 people's worth of belief in yourself, to have carried that belief all the way to Seoul and a contract and a studio, and then to have had the specific, irreversible, meticulously legal thing done to you that Kang Entertainment does, and to go home on a train and never record again. She does not know Han Soo-yeon's face. She knows the shape of the story. And the shape of the story lives in Ari's chest tonight alongside everything else, because Ari is a black woman singer from Atlanta who has stood in rooms where other people held all the power and called it opportunity. And she knows the shape of that story in her body the way you know a song you learned before you had words for it. She thinks about the contract on her desk. She has not looked at it since she got home. It is still where she left it this morning, before the café, before Min-Seo, before the photograph, before everything that has happened since. Sitting in its cream-colored folder with the Kang Entertainment letterhead at the top and the signature lines at the bottom, and the language in between that is beautiful and careful and says, in the particular way that all music contracts say things, everything except what it is actually asking. She thinks about Atlanta. She thinks about the label there that loved her voice and owned, once she had signed, every commercial thing she made with it. The specific experience of being a black woman artist in a room where the people across the table have the money and the infrastructure and the reach. And what they are offering is access to all of that in exchange for something she has not yet fully counted the cost of. She has been in that room before. She knows what the room smells like. She knows the way the language changes between the meeting and the contract. She is sitting on the floor of her Seoul apartment because she has been in that room before, and the question she is sitting inside tonight is whether this room is a different room or the same room in a different city. She picks up her phone. She puts it down. She picks it up again, opens the messages to Ji-Hoon, looks at what she has not yet typed, and puts it down a third time. She is not ready. She does not know yet what she would say. She does not know yet what she feels clearly enough to put it into language, and she has enough respect for both of them to wait until she does. She sings. Not a song anyone would recognize, not a song she has written yet, not a song that has a name or a finished melody or a lyric that has resolved itself into language. Just sound. Just her voice finding the shape of something she has not yet found words for, low and soft and moving through the dark apartment the way water moves through a space that is trying to hold it, feeling its way around the furniture, finding the edges of the room. It is not pretty singing. It is not performance. It is the thing she does when she is inside something too large to think her way through and needs to feel her way instead, the oldest use of a voice, older than music, older than language. The sound of a person who is still here and is still feeling and has not yet decided what to do next, but is, for the moment, singing in the dark of a Seoul apartment while the city blazes outside her window, and that is enough. For now, that is enough. Scene 8. Sungwoo escalates. Across the city, the private consequences of the truth have already begun to move into rooms where privacy does not survive. While Ari sits on her floor with more truths than one feeling can hold, Seung-woo Kang is on the 32nd floor turning those truths into leverage. This is the thing to understand about Seung-woo. He is never not making a move. Even in the hours that other people use for rest, for disengagement, for the necessary maintenance of a self that exists outside professional calculation, Seung-woo is running the board. It is not anxiety. It is not obsession in the clinical sense. It is simply the complete and genuine absence of any interior life that he values more than the continued function of the Kang entertainment empire, which he has spent 15 years building into something that operates on scale and with the specific indifference of a system that no longer requires any single decision to sustain it. He has made himself, deliberately and with great craft, into a man whose removal from the equation would not stop the equation. He finds this more satisfying than anything else he has ever made. He knows about the conversation in the park. He has sources inside his own family the way other people have sources inside companies. Not surveillance exactly, nothing so crude, but a network of information that flows toward him because he has spent years ensuring that the flow of information in his direction is economically preferable for the people who carry it to the flow of information in any other direction. He knows Ji-Hoon spoke to the American singer for 40 minutes outside the side entrance. He knows the nature of the conversation or enough of its nature. He does not know what Ji-Hoon has told her precisely. He knows enough. What Seung-woo does is not a threat. This is what distinguishes him from lesser operators. The threat is the tool of someone who is reacting, and Seung-woo does not react. He preempts. The document on his desk is not a warning. It is something considerably more sophisticated. A new contract offer, supplementary to the existing preliminary agreement, structured to appear as everything Ari Washington could want from a Korean entertainment partnership. Creative control language generous enough to read as unusual, royalty structures competitive enough to appear like a statement of respect, international distribution clauses written with the specific expansiveness that a singer from Atlanta who came to Seoul for a dream would, Seung-woo has calculated, find difficult to walk away from. It is beautiful on its surface. On its underside, with the patience required to read what is actually written rather than what appears to be written, it is a cage with a better view than the last one, more generous in the terms that look generous, more restrictive in the places that matter. The creative exit clauses narrowed, the non-compete provisions broadened, the intellectual property language widened in the direction of the label in ways that would take a lawyer 3 hours to fully map, and that most people who are holding a dream in both hands and looking at an opportunity to keep it will simply not take 3 hours to do. He signs it. He has it sealed. He has it delivered by messenger that same evening to the address in Mapogu that his files have had for 3 weeks, because Seung-woo keeps files and the files are comprehensive. He does this all from his desk without changing his expression, because his expression does not change based on what he is doing. He brought it to a resting state of controlled neutrality long ago, and he has kept it there through every meeting, every termination, every acquisition, every conversation in which someone on the other side believed they were negotiating from a position that was not, in fact, available to them. He does not think about Han Soo-yeon. This is not suppression. It is not that he thinks about her and pushes the thought away. She does not arise. He made a business decision 5 years ago based on a projection model that proved accurate, and the decision was executed cleanly, and the file is closed. What he thinks about instead is Ji-Hoon. Specifically, Ji-Hoon's consistent and recurring tendency to introduce sentiment into situations where sentiment is a liability, which Sung-woo has been managing for 9 years and which has recently, in the form of a singer from Georgia with natural curls and a nose ring, introduced a variable that his current projections flag as requiring management. The document on its way to Mapogu is the management. He leans back in his chair, and the Seoul skyline performs itself behind him through the floor-to-ceiling glass, a city arranged like a backdrop he personally commissioned, and he considers the problem of his brother with the same unhurried precision he brings to everything, and decides that sentiment, in the hands of someone like Ji-Hoon, is best managed not by confrontation, but by environment. You do not fight the feeling. You redesign the room around it until the feeling has nowhere useful to land. Scene 9. Ji-Hoon makes his move. He has known for 3 years what he would need to do if Sung-woo ever made another cage and called it an offer. He did not think it would feel like this. Like breathing out after holding it for so long that the release itself is almost painful, the specific muscular ache of something that has been braced for too long finally, with great care, letting go. The file is not thin. Ji-Hoon has been building it for 3 years with the same methodical patience that he applies to everything he considers worth applying himself to. And he has considered this worth it since the night he sat in the chair outside Studio C and made the decision he has been paying for ever since. It contains the documentation of Han Soo-yeon's contract and termination, obtained through legal channels that required considerable persistence and the assistance of a contact in the contracts division who owed him a favor he has been carefully preserving for exactly this purpose. It contains the contracts of 4 other artists who passed through Kang Entertainment in the 5 years before Han Soo-yeon, terminated under similar circumstances, their post-departure recording histories mapping the same pattern of abrupt silence. It contains a paper trail of the specific clauses used in each case, the creative separation language, the non-compete provisions, the intellectual property terms that legally prevent the artists from benefiting from the work they made in the period of the contract even after the contract ends. It contains, in a separate and carefully annotated section, the financial records that show the revenue Kang Entertainment has continued to receive from that work. He is not delivering it to a journalist. Not yet. He knows Sung-woo well enough to understand that the first move in a process like this must be legal, must be documentable, must create an immovable foundation before anything becomes public. Because Sung-woo's response to public pressure is to attack the credibility of the source, and Ji-Hoon will not give him a credibility argument to make. He delivers it to a lawyer, an entertainment and labor attorney whose practice Ji-Hoon has been researching quietly for 18 months, who has brought 2 previous industry cases and won one of them, who received Ji-Hoon's call yesterday and scheduled this meeting for this morning without asking questions that Ji-Hoon was not ready to answer, which told him something important about her judgment. He sits across the desk from her, and he watches her read, and he keeps his hands still on his knees, the silver watch visible on his left wrist, catching the desk lamp light in the way it catches every light. The way it has caught every light for 3 years in corridors and boardrooms and the backs of cars and the chair outside Studio C and now here, in a law office, at the beginning of a process that once started cannot be unstarted. This is the specific irreversibility of what he is doing, the thing he has understood for 3 years and has been finding reasons to defer, and which this morning, for the first time, he has run out of reasons to defer. The file, once in her hands, begins a legal process. The legal process, once begun, will reach Sungwoo within days. When it reaches Sungwoo, every door back to the life Ji-Hoon has been living, the controlled, guarded, empire-adjacent life in which he is the heir who behaves and the brother who complies and the function that the Kang family requires him to be, will close. He has known this for 3 years. He has been deciding, every morning when he put the watch on, whether today is the day he is willing to pay that price. He looks at the silver watch. He does not take it off. He has decided he will not take it off until Han Soo-yeon, or the idea of Han Soo-yeon, or the principle of what her silence represents, has been given something more useful than his daily private penance, something with actual consequence, something that operates in the world outside his own conscience. He is not sure this will be enough. He is certain it is more than what he has been doing. He keeps his hands still on his knees, and the lawyer across from him turns another page, and outside the law office window, Seoul does what Seoul always does, which is continue, enormous and luminous and entirely indifferent to the fact that something irreversible has just, quietly, begun. Scene 10. The decision. In the end, it comes down to the contract Sungwoo sent, the city that has started to feel like home, and the question Ari Washington has been avoiding since the photograph appeared on Min-Seo's laptop. What kind of dream is still worth signing for? The supplementary contract arrived 3 hours ago, delivered by a messenger she did not recognize to an address she did not give the label directly, which is information she has noted and filed. She has read it twice. Once quickly, the first read, the one that clocks the shape and the surface and the general direction. Once slowly, the second read, the one that her father, who worked in corporate insurance for 22 years and spent every Sunday dinner making sure his daughter understood that language is a tool and tools can be used to build or to constrain, and you need to learn to tell the difference before you pick them up, always told her was the only read that counted. The second read took her 2 hours, a legal dictionary app, 3 separate text messages to a music lawyer friend in Atlanta who responded within minutes because it is still afternoon there, and a growing quiet, specific certainty about what the document is actually asking that is not the same thing as what it appears to be offering. She is standing at the window. The contract is in her left hand and the pen is in her right hand, and Seoul is laid out in front of her in all its extraordinary, rain-slicked, neon-drenched enormity, a city that was never supposed to be home and has been, for the past several weeks, insisting on becoming one anyway. Pink lanterns from the Pojangmaka 2 streets over. The blue-white glare of a convenience store sign. The moving geometry of headlights and tail lights on the wet road below. The Han River visible in the far distance, catching the city light in its dark surface, a sheet of reflected Seoul stretching to the other bank. She has not yet decided whether she finds the view comforting or overwhelming, and she has been finding that the city does not particularly mind which one she lands on, which is one of the things she has come to appreciate about it. It's magnificent. Structural indifference, the way it does not require her to feel any particular thing about it in order to continue being completely, uncompromisingly itself. She knows things now that she did not know when the envelope arrived. She knows about Han Soo-yeon, not just the archive blog post now, but the shape of a person made vivid by Ji-Hoon's account. A 22-year-old from Busan with a 3-octave range and 40,000 believers, and a train home that left Seoul Station on a night when someone sat in a corridor and did not open a door. She knows about Sungwoo, who has sent her this contract from his 32nd floor office in the language of generosity and means something else entirely by it. She knows about Ji-Hoon and the file he has been compiling for 3 years and the lawyer's office he visited this morning, though she does not yet know the specifics of this. She does not know he has already moved, already begun the irreversible process, already chosen, but something in her, below the level of information, has been registering since the particular quality of a man who has made a decision and is sitting inside the knowledge of what it will cost him and has not blinked. She sets the pen down on the windowsill. She looks at the contract in her left hand for a long moment, the cream-colored paper, the careful language, the signature line at the bottom that is waiting for something she has not yet decided to give. She thinks about Atlanta. She thinks about the label there and the contract that she did not read slowly enough and the specific education of having signed something that looked like opportunity and discovering, incrementally, what opportunity looked like from the other side of the ink. She thinks about the dream she came to Seoul with, which has not changed shape exactly but has deepened, has acquired dimensions it didn't have when she got off the plane, has become entangled with things she was not expecting to be entangled with, has become. In the vocabulary of the city, she is looking at through a rain-touched window, something that belongs here now as well as to the woman she was when she packed her bags in Atlanta and told herself she was starting over. She picks the pen up again. Seoul does not tell her what to do. It has never told her what to do. It has simply been here, vast and specific and rain-slicked and neon-lit and full of music that sounds like everything she knows and nothing she has heard before. Full of people doing the quietly remarkable thing of living their lives in a city of 10 million people with the specific, private determination that cities of 10 million require. And it has not required anything of her except that she be present in it, which she has been, more fully than she anticipated, more fully than she planned. Ari Washington, who came to Seoul for a dream and found something she does not have a word for yet, something that lives in the same space as the dream, but is larger than it and less certain and more true, closes her eyes. She takes a breath that she holds for a moment longer than a breath needs to be held. She lets the city come through the glass and the rain and the window at her, all of it. Seoul in its full late-night blazing enormity. Seoul that does not simplify. Seoul that does not offer easy answers. Seoul that simply shines and hums and continues. Beautiful and indifferent and alive. And she decides. Subscribe plus hit the bell. New episodes drop every week. Like if that confession scene destroyed you. Comment. Did she sign it or walk away? Share. Your person needs to be watching this. End of episode 4. The Name She Found. Seoul in Seoul. Original K-drama audiobook series. All characters and story elements original fiction.